This is not the standard view. This is not consensus thinking about how investment management should work. Honestly, most of the money in active management is flowing to the big firms. I've spent decades now in the industry. I have so many friends that have spent decades in the industry, and I just believe firmly that the big firms in our industry have got this wrong. I'm Connor, a founder and the CEO of City Different Investments. So here's my argument in a nutshell. 1, culture creates performance. Within that, I'll talk about why bigger isn't better when it comes to investment management and a lot of what we think the big firms are doing wrong, why people matter more than process, and how employees drive better results for both companies and investors. 2, how you actually create a culture that drives performance. Hint, it's not the performance art you see at the big firms. And 3, the data that backs me up. The subset of truly exceptional differentiated investors out there usually doesn't like to work in a way that is rewarded in the slacks, Patagonia vest, assembly line culture at the big shops. To really have a different perspective, usually these investors are pretty unique individuals. And if you give them the room within a culture of freedom and responsibility to do the work they know how, the way they believe it should be done, and it just creates magic on behalf of our clients. The more layers you put in between the client and the person doing the work on behalf of the client, the more the work gets distracted and incentives become misaligned with doing the very best for your client. You can make up for it, all of that wasted time with extra hours, which is mostly what our industry does. Hence 6 to 6 butts in seats, 60+ hour weeks. But isn't it better? Isn't it better to create a work environment that allows your employees to work super efficiently on what's best for their clients, get their work done, and have a more fulfilling life with their family or outside of work as well? A lot of my competitors, the big competitors, talk about how client-focused they are in their outward-facing advertising. I have a hard time believing that they care about their clients as humans if they aren't also proving that they care about their employees as humans. Do the clients care? Like if we're providing results, do we care if there's less work-life balance for those employees, or they spend more of their time on internal reporting? No, not necessarily. But in my experience, I've seen a direct connection between feeling of happiness, purpose, excitement in the purest form of the job in those flat entrepreneurial cultures that gets destroyed once guardrails are put up, once an organization gets too prescriptive about how people need to do their work. And that all happens, I think, to the detriment of long-term returns, to the detriment of the client experience. I describe work in the investment industry at the big companies sometimes as a performative art. There are long-term measures in our industry that really show, are we doing good work on behalf of our clients? And I would say 5-year plus track records are a good measure. 5 years is a long time for a company to sit and wait to figure out whether their employees are doing good work. So the big businesses in our industry will figure out all sorts of ways to track the smaller steps that lead to that long-term performance track record. And they can't help but track and measure people based on how they're doing on these things. One of these measures in our industry would be what often in our industry is called internal research notes. So how many interesting write-ups around news events or other things that are going on in the investments in the portfolios are you doing? And clearly, more internal research notes are better than less, right? No, that's not how it works. So I've been around many employees who are really, really, really good at producing lots of research notes, but actually not that great investors. Maybe because they're spending so much time producing so many research notes to show the team how hard they're working. I have friends in the industry that work together on a portfolio, 3 of them. And one of the 3 co-portfolio managers stepped down. I think the co-portfolio manager was seeking purpose in their life in a way that they didn't feel like they were being fulfilled in the role. But also, it seems like that co-portfolio manager was a bit burnt out. In the institutionalized version of this job, it's long hours, it's watching markets overseas. It can be a lot. It can be straining on an individual. And I was talking to these colleagues about, well, what's gonna happen? Who's gonna replace that portfolio manager that's departing? And the other 2 colleagues said, well, no one. What do you mean no one? We got it, the 2 of us. Okay, so in our industry, we're allowing people to get burnt out in a job that they weren't even required to do to generate good results for their clients. Don't need to be replaced when they leave. That to me is just a great example of how nuts this performative art within the big institutions can look. We at City Different work in this incredibly competitive industry that is so people-driven. How do we keep our best people? We keep our best people by building a culture of freedom, a culture of responsibility. We hire grown-ups and we treat them like grown-ups, and we nurture the whole person. Especially in long-term investing on behalf of our clients, there's a creative aspect to the art that really relies on human beings thinking differently, and people turnover gets in the way of an organization being able to deliver on long-term investment approaches on behalf of clients. Gallup recently put out numbers that show that conservatively estimated, the cost to replace an employee that's left an organization is between 0.5 and 2 times that employee's salary each year. There's huge cost to replace turnover at organizations. And whether you're an RIA or an investment management firm serving RIAs, investing cash money and resources, human capital resources, on doing work for our clients is way better than having to work to replace those employees that we've lost. Huge support for creating a culture that's gonna attract and retain outstanding people. When you institutionalize an investment firm, butts in seats all hours of the day, meetings upon meetings, red tape everywhere, your best people are going to leave. When your people leave, client results suffer, period. Workers with higher flexibility in when, where, and how they work report higher job satisfaction and are less likely to leave. These forced return to office mandates are a microcosm of everything that's wrong with institutional investment office culture. I've recently read JP Morgan is forcing their employees full-time back into the office. And my initial reaction was, come on, Jamie, you're better than this. I have a tremendous amount of respect for JP Morgan, the organization, over the years, and especially in their leader, Jamie Dimon. But boy, the leaked audio recently about his views on return to office were juicy.
A lot of you were on the Zoom and you were doing the following, okay? Looking at your mail, sending texts to each other about where the other person is, okay? Not paying attention, not reading your stuff, and if you don't think that slows down efficiency, creativity, creates rudeness and stuff, it does, okay? And when I found out that people are doing that, you don't do that in my meetings. You go to meet with me, you got my attention, you got my focus, I don't bring my phone, I'm not sending texts to people, okay? It simply doesn't work. And it doesn't work for creativity, it slows down decision making, and don't give me the that work from home Friday works. I call a lot of people on Friday, there's not a person you get a hold of.
He and the organization are stuck in an old way of doing business that I don't think, clearly, I don't think this is gonna serve their clients better. There were some great articles in The Atlantic that talked about how actually that the remote work environment worked really well for a lot of employees, and they wanted to get their work done. They wanted to do great work, despite very little involvement and interactivity with maybe middle management overseeing them. It makes me wonder a little bit if some of this return to work push is driven by management teams from the very top, trying to make sure that everybody knows how important the management teams are in the work that's getting done. At our best, City Different at our best is me, our CEO, getting out of the damn way and letting our employees do the best work exactly the way that they know how to. And that's probably not a good case for a big paycheck as a CEO from a corporate board of a publicly traded company. There's almost no data that supports that we are better off together in an office. The Bureau of Labor Statistics found that total factor productivity growth, both during the pandemic and after the pandemic, is positively associated with the rise in the percentage of remote workers across 61 different industries in the private business sector, even after accounting for pre-pandemic trends in rising productivity. Basically, as remote work increased, productivity increased, controlling for all other factors. So City Different launched from the beginning remote first, so work from anywhere. And we believed from the beginning that to attract the best people, giving them ultimate flexibility in terms of how, where, when they do their job would get us the very best people and get the best work out of them. Pretty quickly, as the pandemic started in 2020, not just City Different, but companies all over the world proved that you could do really outstanding work in a remote first posture. We always believed that a work from anywhere over whatever hours it is that you in your own life want to do your work on behalf of our clients, that would be best for our clients in the long term. I did notice in one survey that 40% of CEOs admitted that their huge real estate leases were a significant piece of why they were bringing their people back to work, which once again, I don't think serves either the employees or the clients in any of those instances. A recent study shows, for example, that of a subset of employees, if they're forced back into office full-time 5 days a week, 22% would expect increased pay against that requirement, and 40%, they're gonna look for a new job. They're gonna look for somewhere else to work. In our industry, clearly our people are our assets. Our assets walk out the door every day, or if they're working from home, they move from their home office to the kitchen and the bedroom every day. And we need to value our talent, our assets in this industry as human beings. They are everything in terms of our ability to perform on behalf of our clients, and treating them like cogs in a big machine is not going to get the best work out of our people, and it's not going to deliver the best returns for our clients. At our prior shop and here at City Different, we're fundamental investors with a very long-term orientation. So we look very closely and deeply at the businesses we're considering investing in. And something that I've found through almost 25 years in this industry these days is really great corporate cultures that support their people have driven really outstanding returns. When we find companies to invest in that have exceptional, differentiated cultures, we see great results. A 2011 study of an equal-weighted portfolio investing in the 100 best places to work, that is companies that have awesome cultures, showed that equal-weighted portfolio had long-term returns 3.5% better annualized than other companies, even when controlled for other factors. Even with all of this data out there now, the study's published, everybody knows, it hasn't been incorporated into valuations at businesses across the industry. It's not a big driving part of research processes at organizations looking for the best companies to invest in. Even when the data is right in front of us, this institutionalized industry can't get out of its own way. I spent the better part of a decade, so I think I did 10 trips organized by Rich Greenfield. Shout out to Rich Greenfield, he did a great job organizing those trips out to Silicon Valley. But I did the same bus trip every year. And we had to spend an hour every year in a small group setting with Reed Hastings of Netflix. We invested early in Netflix. It was just an awesome investment for us and for our clients. And I loved how transparent the founder and CEO Reed Hastings was, and how intentional he was about building a really different culture at a Silicon Valley business. He called it a culture of freedom and responsibility. Key tenets are simply hire grown-ups and trust them to do exceptional work. Really trying to, they call it looking for A players and keeping A players in their business. It has made a huge difference as they have grown and now have come to dominate streaming television services here in the US. From the beginning here at City Different Investments, we've really focused on the culture we're trying to build, the alignment of long-term incentives amongst our clients, customers, our employees, the owners of the business. And my dream is that we're able to build a company that supports amazing investors, really outstanding, unique investors in doing their very best work on behalf of our clients. There are a handful of exceptional talents in our industry that usually don't conform to big firms' definition of what it means to be successful. I think they are good because they take a very different approach. And for that handful of exceptional talents, a bunch of which I believe we have here at City Different, creating a culture that supports them in the way that they believe they should invest without having to conform to our industry's norms, that's a special thing. It's hard for that group of really exceptional investors to find a culture that supports them doing the work in that differentiated way, in a different process that leads to really outstanding returns. You've got to find a reason that a company is misunderstood in order to expect good results when investing in a company, because if everybody understands a good business, it's overvalued. This isn't just a theoretical exercise for us here at City Different. This idea that focus on culture will drive much better long-term results for our clients, we put into practice. We're heavily invested, we're betting our careers on these strategies that we're building on behalf of our clients here at City Different Investments.